who don't know me, my name is Cath Anne, and I'm the weekly host of the Homework Help Global's The Learning Studio. And I can't believe it, but this is our 4th episode. It's so hard to believe. And last week we talked a little bit about thesis statements and how to write them appropriately. I'm just going to adjust my camera here for a minute. And hi, the neighborly consultant and G-Core. You guys are getting to be regulars. Nice to see you. So I was just introducing our topic for this week, and the topic is how to do effective research. So it kind of goes along with our topic from last week, which was how to write an effective thesis statement. So I know that things are starting to pick up here with school, and most programs require you to write at least one essay. I know that some programs are more weighted in exams as opposed to essays, and other programs are weighted to essays. Are any of you students currently, or did you take programs that were more weighted towards exams or essays? I know that when I was in school, I wrote a lot of essays because I was in sociology and social work, and so we didn't have as many exams. We did have some when I first started university, but it was definitely a lot more essays than it was exams. I'm just a little bit distracted because I want to make sure that I'm still live on Facebook, and I don't know if I think I might have essays for days. I know, G-Core, it is really so many essays, which I don't mind, but I'm just going to make sure that I'm still live. I'm doing this through a program, so we've had a couple of hiccups here, but anyway, so this week I wanted to jump in and start talking about academic research and how to do it effectively, if that is helpful for folks. So first I wanted to talk about why academic sources are important. So can anyone kind of give me a sense of why academic sources are pertinent to when you're doing research? So academic sources are really important because we want to be spreading research that is valid. So when we are talking about research, we want to make sure that we are resorting to credible sources for the sources of our information. And that is why professors are so, I guess I would call them sticklers when it comes to using credible resources, and they often want academic and peer-reviewed articles, and that's what they always request when they are looking for academic papers. So basically, your essay is only as good as the sources that you're using. So that's why I wanted to discuss today academic resources. And academic resources can be broken down into kind of 2 categories. So there are primary resources and then secondary resources. Primary resources, does anyone want to chime in with what primary resources are? I know we only have 3 folks on here right now, but I don't want to grill you too much. So primary resources are those sources of raw data. So those are interviews, those are archive information from archives, The best resources, well, not necessarily. Yeah, so they're pieces of raw data. But yeah, so they're like letters, diaries, pieces of art, anything that people create, maps, charts, meeting minutes. So those are not going to be sources that you'll use probably regularly if you're in an undergraduate program. Although maybe when you get into third and fourth year and you start doing a bit more in-depth research, if you're in a history major, you might start looking at archives and investigating some information there. If you're in sociology courses, you might start to do some research in terms of gathering data through interviews. So primary sources are those sources of raw data. And then secondary sources are probably what we are most familiar with as students, and that is those resources that have already been kind of developed and they've already gone through that process of peer review. So those are like journal articles, chapters in scholarly books, monographs, textbooks, encyclopedias, and even some websites could be considered secondary sources. And so secondary sources are often a compilation of primary sources with a little bit of additional research. So when you're writing a paper, most likely in an undergraduate degree, you will be using secondary sources. So when you're beginning your research, you will certainly want to make sure that your resources are academic. So you're not just going to want to jump on the internet, although it's very tempting, and just type something into Google and think that is a reputable source. I'm sure most people are aware of that, and if not, I'm sure that your professors have told you that, although sometimes it can certainly be tempting because we do have information readily at our fingertips all the time these days. So you'll want to make sure that it is an academic source. So I wanted to give you some information about how to determine that. So first, you'll want to be looking for the words peer-reviewed. And peer-reviewed means that it has gone through a rigorous process of review. So people who are in academia and who do research are subject to scrutiny by their peers. And that's basically what the peer review means. So when someone goes to submit something to a journal article, they go through a whole process of determining whether their research was valid, whether their methodology was valid, whether how they presented it was appropriate, and they might have to go back and review it and change some things. And so that is the process of determining whether something is a valid source of information or not. So when you're doing research for your papers, you'll want to make sure that you're only accessing academic articles that have been peer-reviewed. So in order to determine that, you'll want to make sure that you're either sourcing it from a database where peer-reviewed articles are available. So for example, you'll go on the database, you'll search in your journal, you'll do a journal search, and you'll want to make sure that the journal that you're drawing the information from provides only peer-reviewed information. And that can be found by researching the journal. Usually when you're using a database that is provided by a university, so a reputable source, something that you pay for to access when you're a student, most of the content that's on those databases are going to be peer reviewed. They're going to be journals that are valid sources of information, but you're going to want to make sure of that. So going into the journal itself and looking to make sure that they do go through a peer review process. Also, sorry, I feel like this is a lot of information all at once, so if you need me to slow down, I can. Also, when you are going in to do your database search, you will see probably over on, I guess, the right side, that there will be different options that you can choose to do your search. And one of them is usually you're able to click peer reviewed, articles. And then when you do your search in the search bar, only peer-reviewed articles will come up. And then you can be certain that anything that you're using in your paper is a peer-reviewed article. So, although I said that you shouldn't just jump on Google and do your search, there is an option on Google called Google Scholar. And it is scholar.google.ca, and you can do searches on that resource. And in order, but as I said, you're going to want to make sure that your search is still a peer-reviewed source. So how do you determine that in Google Scholar? Well, as I mentioned, you can go to the actual journal and make certain that the journal that you're sourcing from goes through a peer review process. And then you can kind of do your own sort of investigative piece. So you'll want to look at the research article and question, is this a research article? Has research been done? Has this research been conducted by the authors of the article? And if so, generally it has gone through a peer review process. Also, most research papers have kind of like a front sheet that will demonstrate or determine that they are from peer-reviewed journals. So just kind of do a little investigation. There should be a note on the actual paper that indicates that. G-Core, we have a question. How much research should we do? Should we go broad then narrow, or start narrow? So can you be a little bit more specific about that question? Because I do have a little bit of information about that, but do you mean should you gather a lot of information at first and then narrow it down, or narrow it down and then broaden? So I would say definitely don't rush the research process. Depending on how long, I think it just depends on what kind of paper you're writing. So depending on how long your paper is going to be, you're probably going to want to gather some information over the course of, a couple of weeks at least, and then narrow it down. And then another important thing to consider is that when you're doing your research, and I guess I can move on to my next topic here because this is kind of in line with what you're asking. You're going to want to kind of narrow your search. So what I mean by that is that when you're doing your search, you're looking in a database, and you don't necessarily know what words you're looking for. So, for example, I have an example here. Just give me 1 second. So, for example, if I'm doing, because my background is in social work and a lot of my research was on homelessness. So, if I'm doing a search on homelessness amongst women in Canada, and I'm looking on my database, but I don't know what information that database is going to have or bring up around that. So I'm going to want to type in my 3 words. So I'm going to type in homeless, women, and feminism maybe, because I want to do it through a feminist lens. So I'll type in all of those words and I'll see what comes up. I'll see kind of what information is available on that topic. And then I might draw some words from those descriptions. So say some other words like social justice, social work, housing, poverty. Those kinds of words start to come up, and I'll further my research from there. So my kind of approach when I'm doing a bigger paper is I like to kind of start somewhere. So start with my topic and gather some information on that topic, gather some relevant literature, read that over, and then kind of frame my research from there, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that necessarily directly answered your question, G-Core, but I think that it's a good approach to kind of do an initial search, even if you wanted to do it on Google Scholar and not in a database. Do an initial search and see what's available, see what the information is that's already out there on that topic. Take some of those key concepts and then use them towards further research. I don't know if that answered. Okay, good. I feel like that was a roundabout way to answer it, but that's kind of how I approach research, is I try to understand what's already out there and then narrow my focus from there. And so that can also help to, like I said, draw out some of that language when you're actually looking for some specific information. So as I mentioned, if I put those initial homelessness, women, and feminism into my search, that might bring up some more words that I can use in my searches, because you don't always know what that database is going to have or retrieve around those words. So you want to be kind of open to using different language to get the resources that you want, and not kind of give up on your search and just kind of be satisfied with subpar resources. So you want to make sure that you're getting the best information that you can. I'm just going to go back to my notes here for a moment, because there was another piece that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned. Oh yeah. So just kind of rewinding a little bit. So when you are determining if something is an appropriate resource, you're also going to want to make sure that it's not a book review. Book reviews can be helpful. So when you're doing your research, kind of what I was already saying about it's important to see what's out there. And I find book reviews can sometimes be helpful to help you understand those in-depth concepts about more academic and scholarly books, because they kind of do a breakdown and a little bit of an analysis of that dense information sometimes. But you want to make note that a book review does not pass as a valid academic resource when you're writing a paper. So if your professor is asking for 7 to 10 resources or references, make sure that you are aware that a book review would not count as one of those resources. Okay. So, and then another note that I wanted to make and it's kind of in line with my topic from last week about the thesis statement, but when you're writing a research paper, you want to make sure that you bear in mind that it's not just a gathering of information and like a purveying of resources. You want to make sure that you are forming some kind of argument or statement about that information. And G-Core, this goes back to your question as well. So that means that you want to make sure that you understand the content of your research, so that you've read over the research, you really know what you're talking about and kind of what's out there in terms of research on that topic. And then formulating kind of an argument around that. Okay, so then I wanted to go specifically into what are subject headings and keywords. So when you open a database, and so every kind of institution and university has some kind of research database or library that you pay for as a student. So when you open a database, you'll see a drop-down menu with various options, and you've probably seen this before. It's you'll usually have like title, keyword, subject, author, all of those different things. Sorry. And sorry, that's my cat. I forgot to put him away. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay. So you'll want to use the subject headings to describe the content in a database. So, for example, subject headings are the best way that you are going to be able to get information and do a good search. So when you're looking at that drop-down menu, either make sure that you're clicking keyword or subject headings, and those are going to get the best, most accurate information that you're looking for. So like I mentioned too, you're not always going to know what a database is going to bring up, so that's why it's good to do kind of multiple searches and use keywords and different ideas as they come up in the research. Thanks, the neighborly consultant. I usually put him away, and I'm embarrassed that he showed up, but of course it's just because I'm talking and I think he just wants to be involved. So I love cats too. So the example that I have about this database idea is that, for example, when you're searching in a phone book or the yellow pages, but who has a phone book or yellow pages anymore? But anyone who can relate to that, and you're searching for movie theaters in the book, but you can't find anything under the title of movie theaters. And then you realize that it's actually under the title theaters movie. So when you're looking in a database, you're going to want to use different words and different language as you continue to do your research and modify your searches, because you don't know what's going to come up in which database, if that makes sense. Kind of how they've hidden the information. So then the next topic I wanted to discuss is Boolean operators, and I'm not going to go too in depth with this just because it can get quite extensive, but I did want to do a bit of an overview of it just because it's important to discuss when you're talking about academic research. So Boolean operators, does anyone know what I'm referring to when I say that? So Boolean operators are used to connect and define the relationship between your search terms. So basically, when you're searching in academic or electronic databases, you can use these words to either narrow your search or broaden your search. And also, this kind of goes G-core to what you were asking about. So the three Boolean operators are super simple. It's a big word to use to describe three very simple words, which are and, or, and not. So the word and can be used to narrow your search. So when you use the word and, all of your search terms will appear in your search. So for example, if I wanted to do a search on online courses and academic performance, and I wanted both of those terms to come up, I would use the word and. So I'll just show you a little Venn diagram that I have done up here. So, and I know Instagram it's going to be in reverse, but basically I have one circle that says academic performance and one circle that says online courses. And in the middle, we will have all of the articles that have both of those terms in them. And it will also bring up all the information on both of those terms. So that's in order to narrow your search. If you want to broaden your search, you will want to use the word or. So, for example, if we want to stay in the same line of thinking, We could say online courses, or web-based instruction, or distance learning. And then it'll bring up all of the information using all of those words. So whereas and kind of narrows it down and limits your search, or expands the search. So it retrieves all the unique records containing one of those terms or both of those terms, if that makes sense. And then you can also use the word not. So if there's something that you don't want to include in your search, so say you want to do a search specifically on higher education and only on university, not college. So you would put in your search higher education, not community colleges. And then hopefully only your search would only bring up information about universities. At least it wouldn't bring up information about community colleges. Okay? And so that's just a very, very basic and brief example of Boolean searches, but they can go much more in depth. Actually, there was one more thing I wanted to discuss, which was, so you want to bear in mind that if you are using Google Scholar, which I'll discuss in a couple of minutes, to do any searching, you want to bear in mind that Google puts the word and automatically in between every word that you search. So even if you don't say the word and, it still automatically puts it. So for example, if you were trying to search something about college students and test anxiety, if you put that directly into Google, it would be translated to college and students and test and anxiety, which is not what you want. So in order to get the accurate search, you'll want to put parentheses around the groups of words that you want to stay together. So for example, you want to put college students and test anxiety, and that would be your search, because then it divides up the groups of words that you want to stay together, and it also suggests that in the search you want those groups of words to be placed together, if that makes sense. So yeah, college students in parentheses, and then the word and then test anxiety. Are there other keywords? Do you mean are there other Boolean terms, Core? As opposed to and, or not? Words that can be used such as and, etc. Not in terms of Boolean searches, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend like these. Yeah, you can use those words, but these are kind of the standard ones that will they will bring you the most effective research results. So if you use and or not in your searching, they will bring you the most accurate and the most effective research. Such as and etc. don't tend to be standardized kind of searching mechanisms, no. Okay, so I think that was it on that. And then I just wanted to give a little brief overview of searching on Google Scholar. So as I mentioned, Google and not and or. And there's core, if you're looking for more information, there is likely a lot of information on the internet just about how to specifically use those. And also, like, if you ever looking for a little template or anything, just let us know, and I'm sure that's something that we might be able to provide for you, or the transcript to this if that's helpful. And also this video will be up, so if you need to go back to it and access it, that's no problem at all. And also, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, just remember that this isn't an extensive overview, so although I did go a little bit in depth into those words, they can be used really extensively in research. There's whole 2-hour-long sessions done just on those 3 words alone. So there's lots of information out there. So just keep in touch and let us know if you do need any other resources, and we can look into it for sure. Or we can do another more in-depth session. So, as you guys know, as you probably know, Google does have a resource. Thank you, the Neighborly Consultant and Core. You guys are always so nice and kind on this live stream. So Google does have a resource that you can access to access scholarly articles. And one thing that I've found in my own kind of research and my own time as a student is that a good way to start your preliminary research is to access Google Scholar. Now, while I would recommend using other academic databases, of course, and the ones that are provided by your university, Google Scholar can be a really good kind of basis to start your research and see what's out there, as I was discussing earlier. So you can start kind of a preliminary literature review using Google Scholar. And so basically you can use all of those techniques that I described, the Boolean searching, the keywords, all in Google Scholar. It just goes right into the search bar, and you should find a host of various resources. And then you can also link to, if you do have access to a university database, you usually can access scholarly articles through your institution. So you'll bring it up on Google Scholar, and then it'll have a login option that'll bring you back to your school's your institution's database, and then you can log in through there. So you're kind of logging in externally. And then another unique thing that I really like about Google Scholar is that often when you do your initial search and it comes up just like a normal Google page, it'll have an option where you can cite. It'll say cite, and it'll have a little drop down menu, and it'll say like MLA format, APA format, Chicago format. It'll have the breakdown of all the different citations for you right there. So first of all, that can help with formulating your reference list at the end of writing your paper. And then second of all, you can also extract that citation and put it into your school's database if you are not able to log in externally. So you can take that and bring it over to your database and log in not log in externally, log in through your database and access that resource if your school does have it. So I find that's a really helpful feature of Google Scholar. And then also a lot of times they do have access to book previews. So sometimes online databases may not have full books available, but the wonderful thing is that you can often access samples of books through Google Scholar. So that's another little tip there for you. And then I have one little other piece for you. So okay, I guess that was it actually. So as I mentioned, there are various resources that you can access to make sure that you're getting scholarly articles. You can access Google Scholar. You can go online through your own school's database and make sure that you're using those Boolean terms, so and, or, and not, to do your searches. Make sure you're using the subject and the description boxes to do your searches, because those are, and the keyword boxes, because they're going to bring up the most relevant resources. And then from there, get started on doing your research. And like I said, don't leave your research till the very end. Enjoy the process of researching. I know that does sound a little bit nerdy, but the way I think of doing research is that it is a skill that you can carry with you throughout your life. And so it's a very valuable skill that you can draw on, and you never know when an agency or an organization is going to need someone to do research. And that's what I've found in my own career, is that having research skills is invaluable, and that it can transfer to basically any career. So it's a good thing to put on your resume, and it's a good thing to bring to a job in the future as well. It helps you get good grades while you are in school as a student. So just before I sign off, I wanted to just remind you that if you are starting to have a little bit of difficulty in school, or you're feeling a little bit of the pressure of writing papers, I just wanted to give a little shout out and remind you that Homework Help Global does provide you with some support to academic essay writing. We can do editing. We can provide you with professional academic writing services. So that is something that is always available to you. Please give us a shout on our website, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. I believe we're on Twitter as well. So give us a shout if you do need any help, and let us know how we can help you at all, as we do have many qualified writers who are willing and able to help you out. And I know it's starting to get crunch time, so we'd love to help you. And I guess that's it for this week. And so I guess I am signing off. Again, my name is Cath Anne. Thank you again for the regulars for joining me. And I hope you all have a lovely evening. We'll let you know the next topic for the live stream as the week goes on. So stay tuned to Facebook and Instagram, and let us know of any topics that come up throughout the week. You can access us on, like I said, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and on our website. And you can use the hashtag AskHHG in order to ask us any questions as they might arise. So we are willing and able to modify this show as you see fit. So I can't wait to hear from you, and I really want to answer more of your questions. So let us know what you're interested in hearing about, and we will design a show around what you guys want to hear. All right, thank you so much for joining me, and have a great evening.